Hi, I'm Dr. Ken Riff. I'm a specialist in internal medicine and I'm the medical director here at COCO. This is going to be the first of several videos that we do on nutrition, because nutrition is such an important part of what we're learning and how to take care of ourselves and how to change our lives for better health. Today we're going to focus on one aspect of food that I know you've all heard of, carbohydrates. It's a very important part of our diet. We'll have some additional videos in the future about fats and about proteins, and by the time we're done with these, you're going to understand these foods, you're going to understand which ones are healthy for you, which ones may not be so healthy for you, and how to adjust your diet to eat in healthy ways. So with that, why don't we go ahead and jump in here with carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are a critical nutrient for our body. Our body runs on carbohydrates. Our brain can only work on carbohydrates. Our muscles work on carbohydrates. And without carbohydrates, we couldn't live. On the other hand, you can also get too much of a good thing. And one of the problems that we do have with people's eating is too much carbohydrate. So let's jump in, talk about how much is enough carbohydrates, what are good carbohydrates, what are bad carbohydrates, and how do we keep ourselves healthy. The average American diet has somewhere between 200 and 250 grams of carbohydrate in them. Now, most of us don't work with grams, so it's hard to know what that really means. So I've got some demonstrations here to show you what grams of carbohydrates look like. One type of carbohydrates are sugars. And I've got a bowl of sugar here, and I've got 1 teaspoon of sugar here. And 1 teaspoon of sugar is about 4 grams of sugar. It's not very much, is it? 28 grams of sugar, or 7 of these, is 1 ounce of sugar. So just to give you a sense of how much sugar we're talking about, here's an ounce, or 28 grams. If we eat the right amount of sugar each day, our body uses that, metabolizes it, our brain runs on it, our muscles run on it, and we stay healthy. If we eat too much sugar, our body puts it away as fat. It converts the sugar into fat. And that's not something that we want to be happening. All carbohydrates are based on sugars. There are simple sugars, the sugar that we eat. Starch is a molecule where sugar molecules are tied together like train cars, and they're connected, and they can be thousands of sugar molecules long. Our body has chemicals to break those connections, and we break starch down back into sugar. So when we talk about sugar and we talk about starch, we're really talking about the same food in different forms. The third type of carbohydrate is fiber. And fiber is also a connection of sugars in a long chain, but our body doesn't have the chemicals to break those sugars apart. So they basically go through us unchanged, which means we don't absorb the sugar, we don't absorb the calories, and we get no real nutritional value out of it. So one might say, well, why eat it in that case? Well, it turns out fibers do 2 very good things for us. One is our colons like fiber a lot, and it's been shown that diets that are high in fiber decrease the risk of cancer of the colon by quite a bit. It's healthy for the colon. Secondly, when we eat fiber, it slows down the absorption of the other carbohydrates in our body, so that when we eat sugar and fiber, we absorb the sugar less quickly, which means that the sugar doesn't rise in our blood as quickly, which means that our body doesn't have to react as strongly to keep our blood sugar under control. So fiber is useful for your digestion, in preventing cancer of the colon, and also in helping with control of sugar. So we're going to go into each one of these in a little more detail. And I want to start with sugars because there is so much sugar that we don't even know that we eat. And I want to show this to you. Sugar is everywhere in our food. And it's really easy to get too much of it without knowing it. For people who have diabetes or prediabetes, these are conditions where people have trouble metabolizing or handling the carbohydrates that they eat. Now, if your body has trouble handling a food, the smart thing to do is to eat less of it. And so people with diabetes should be eating lower amounts of carbohydrates than people without diabetes. It just makes sense. If your body has trouble metabolizing sugar, eat less sugar. Well, how hard is that to do? As I said, the average American diet has about 200 grams of sugar in it. If you have diabetes or prediabetes, you're better off closer to 100 grams of sugar. Now, I said this was 28 grams of sugar, so that's 4 times this. I mean, we're not saying no sugar in your diet. But let me show you how easy it is to get too much sugar in your diet. I'm going to start with this bottle of Mountain Dew. I don't know if you like Mountain Dew or not, but this is a standard size bottle. There are 77 grams of sugar in this bottle. Now at 4 grams per teaspoon, that's 19 teaspoons. So let's see how much sugar is in our Mountain Dew. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Look healthy? I don't think so. Remember we said if you have diabetes or prediabetes, you'd like to stay around 100 grams of sugar. Well, this is 77. That's most of your carbohydrates for the day. You have to like Mountain Dew a lot if we're going to do that. Look at the astounding amount of sugar that's hidden in this bottle. So you say, all right, I'm not going to eat Mountain Dew. Obviously, that may not be good for me. I'm going to go to tea. That's green tea. This looks very healthy. Well, this green tea has 49 grams of sugar in it. I'll just do this one more time. 49 grams at 4, that would be about 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it's a health food. All right, so I hear you saying, all right, no more, I'm just drinking fruit juice, because that's natural, and it's got to be good for me. Well, this fruit juice has 53 grams of sugar in it, which is more. It's actually 13 of these. I won't go through it again, but I want to show you. These are look at the amount of sugar that was hidden in these bottles. In order to make it a little more obvious how much sugar is hidden in many of our processed foods, we've actually put the sugar on the table here in front of the drink so that you can see it very clearly. Here's our Mountain Dew with 19 teaspoons of sugar in it. We tried to get a little healthier by going to juice, but this has 13 teaspoons of sugar in it. Our iced tea is pretty much the same with 12 teaspoons of sugar in it. And here's our apple with 5 teaspoons of sugar in it. The apple, on the other hand, is the healthiest of all of them because it's also got fiber. And by eating the sugar with the fiber, it slows down the absorption of this sugar so we don't get the big spike. And the fiber is also good for our colon in preventing colorectal cancer. Now, we understand that there's still carbohydrates in fruit, and if you ate 4 or 5 of these a day, you would be pushing the amount of carbohydrates that we want you to eat, because we have been talking about 100 grams or maybe 125 grams of carbohydrate a day. If that's what we're aiming for, this is about 3/4 of the amount of carbohydrates you can eat in a day. These are about half the amount of carbohydrates you can eat in a day. This, on the other hand, is only 1/5 of the amount of carbohydrates you can eat in a day. So the difference between this and this in terms of the amount of sugar and how it fits into your carbohydrate allowance for the day is enormous. You are much better off with fruit and vegetables than you ever are with processed drinks, which are, as you can see, basically sugar water with a little bit of color added to them. Finally, you say, all right, I'm just going with health food. Here's an energy bar. This has got to be good for me, right? It says healthy on it right here. Whoops, it's 22 grams of sugar. So there's 1/5 of your sugar for the day. So we are going to be going through a session where we talk about how to read nutritional labels, so that you'll be able to figure out how much sugar is in these foods as well. But the message for today is there's sugar everywhere, there's sugar hiding everywhere, and in general, sugars are not good for you. Sugar is absorbed very quickly by your body. It causes the sugar in your blood to go up very quickly. Your body reacts to that by releasing a hormone called insulin from the pancreas in order to bring that blood sugar back down. If you continue to push your pancreas by eating a lot of sugar and causing the spike in your blood sugar, you're constantly pushing your pancreas to be putting out insulin. And after some period of time, over years, your pancreas gets tired and it wears out. And that's when we start seeing people develop type 2 diabetes. Now, there's more to it than that, but there's no question that eating sugars is one of the most powerful predictors of whether people are going to go on to get diabetes. The second type of carbohydrate that we said we were going to talk about other than sugars are starches. Where do we find starch? Find starch in bread, find starch in potatoes, find starch in pasta. And we said that starches are nothing more than sugars that are tied together in a long chain connected by chemical bonds that our body can break down. And if you put a piece of starch, if you take a piece of bread, for example, and put it in your mouth and let it sit in your mouth for a while, after about a minute, you'll notice it gets sweet. And the reason it gets sweet is because you've got chemicals in your saliva that are breaking down those chemical bonds and turning that starch into sugar. So the reality is that this and this are really the same thing in different forms. On the other hand, this is a lot healthier. Why? First of all, it's got fiber in it. Notice this is brown bread. Foods that are white have been processed to take out the fiber, to take out the various colors, and it takes out a lot of the nutrients. And all that's left is the pure sugar base. And that is a problem as far as having your blood sugar go up. When you eat starches, first of all, the fiber will slow down the absorption of the sugar, and secondly, it takes a while for your body to break those chemical bonds. So you don't get the spike of sugar in your blood that you get when you eat pure sugars. So this, despite the fact that this turns into this is a much healthier choice. In general, we should be avoiding sugars and starches that are white because they're highly refined. We're better off, rather than having white noodles, we're better off with brown noodles. Rice is a starch. We're better off with brown rice than we are with white rice. In general, we want to stay away from white foods because that shows that they're highly refined sugars. They cause big spikes in the sugar in our blood, and they're not healthy for us. Where else do we find starches? We talked about potato, rice, wheat, corn, taro, many of the things that we enjoy the most, unfortunately. Pizza dough, bread, tortillas, poi. But we didn't say that you can't eat it. We did say that we need to watch how much of it we eat and try and keep within a reasonable amount. The third kind of carbohydrate we mentioned was fiber. Where do we find fiber? We find fiber in vegetables. Celery is pure fiber. And we have fiber in fruit. This is the reason that you're going to learn in your nutritional courses that you should be eating 5 helpings of fruit and vegetables a day. And the reason for that is because of the amount of fiber that's in the fruit and vegetables. It's a good, healthy way of getting fiber. So what are the takeaways about carbohydrates? Most of us should probably be eating about half the amount of carbohydrates that we do. Carbs are not bad, but there are a lot of bad carbs. That's the other message. We want to avoid sugars as much as we can, and when we eat starches, we want to eat starches that are made from whole grains, which means they're not white, they're not processed. So if we have a final exam here, and you tell me, you know, I like pancakes with syrup. I don't want to give up my pancakes with syrup. And I know my pancakes are made out of starch. I know that my maple syrup is made out of sugar. Both of those are not particularly good carbs. Does that mean I have to give them up? And the answer is no, you don't have to give them up. But you have to be aware of the fact that they are not necessarily good for you. And it means that you want smaller portions. If possible, use whole wheat flour in your pancakes instead of white flour. Maybe you can find an artificially flavored syrup, flavored with stevia rather than flavored with sugar. And then maybe add some fruit to your pancakes, some strawberries or some blueberries. And that's got some fiber, and that'll help slow down the sugar rush. That's our summary on carbohydrates. They're an important part of our diet. As you work with your health coach will help you decide which carbohydrates you should be eating, what proportion of starches versus sugar versus fibers you should be eating, how many calories of carbohydrates would be good for you over the course of the day. But if we're going to do one thing to change your eating that's going to change your health, it's going to help you reduce your risk of diabetes and also reduce the risk of abdominal fat, what we want to do is control the amount of carbohydrates and the type of carbohydrates in your diet.